Also this song. Oh yeah, so I actually have like a weird funny story about the song for this game, which is that for the longest time, every like handful of years or so, I would go to the Newgrounds audio portal to dig around like their ambient section for like music to listen to. Because it was around the time that I started downloading music, or like I started like organizing my music into playlists for like when I took walks. So like I liked having like specifically a playlist to listen to when I took like rainy walks, let's say. So like the Newgrounds ambient section would have like a lot of stuff that was like, you know, kind of had that like moody feel to it that was like good for that kind of thing. So I just like really like digging around it. And for the longest time, I have had a version of the theme song for this game downloaded, having legitimately no idea that it was from this game. I know this is freaking out anytime I alt-tab, but let me see if I can find it real quick. But yeah, the Newgrounds audio portal is still pretty active even to this day. You can still go there. I can still see all the old stuff that's there. People still upload to it. It's obviously a lot different than it used to be, as far as like, you know, even making amateur music has changed a lot over the years. Yeah, this is it. I bet I can find the link for it too. But this is like how I've known this song for like most of my life up until like maybe a couple of years ago, where I was like, wait, what? Yep, this was uploaded in 2009. But it sounds pretty good. And it doesn't sound out of line with like the other stuff that you'd find on there, so I just rolled with it, thinking it was just a good song. I was actually talking about that a bit, I think yesterday even, where like recommending somebody to play your favorite game or something is like a lot harder than recommending to play like or to like watch your favorite movie or something. Because when it's a game, or when it's a movie, that could just be like, oh yeah, I got like an hour or 2 or 3 to kill this evening. Sure, why not? I'll just watch that real quick. But with a game, it's like, it could be anywhere from like a 5 to a 50-hour investment to be like, yeah, this is one of my favorite games of all time. You should play it. And like, I obviously like recommending people games. At least half the reason I stream is just because I like showing off the games that I care about. I've obviously gotten recommended a lot of games over the year from friends, people online. Obviously, even people in chat have recommended me games that they like a lot. And I'm like, man, I just wish I could play all of them. And honestly, I think there's very few situations where I've played a game that was recommended to me and I didn't end up liking it a lot. But I still just sometimes get that brain worm about starting like a big game on recommendation like that. One thing this game definitely does to my brain is that I have been high enough up in a skyscraper before to see some of like the way that some of these are built and be like, I have experienced something similar enough to that looking out a window that it is like terrifying thinking of running on all of this. Like it helps my brain piece it together in a very visceral way that is probably adding to this experience a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Or I'm just kind of like, ah. I think the highest I've been up in a building was one day where me and Whimsy went to like we were like tagging along with a friend who was doing like some work stuff, who worked in a skyscraper like that. It was on a high enough floor that I had like never at any other point in my life like looked down from something like that and like seen cars and been like, those are actually the size of toy cars like visually right now, and it was very surreal. I never used to feel that kind of way about like heights in video games, but I think using VR literally at all like kind of put like it made 3D models of buildings feel a little bit more real, like in general. And now it's hard not to like look at something like any kind of massive structure, whether I'm on top of it or not, and be able to like better imagine what it would feel like to like, you know, quote unquote stand next to it as a 3D model that like takes up more space in my brain. On Xbox it's Y. Okay. Oh no, so I think I still have mine, like whenever I play any game, I still do have A, B, X, Y as A, B, X, and Y. So I have it like every game that I ever play is like Nintendo reversed, even if that wasn't the intended placement of the buttons. So like for how I do it, I just have it like not automatically reverse the buttons. So even though it would be the top button on the Xbox, because I just have Y still set to Y, it's the left button for me. So I still hit like Y proper. I've been doing that for so long though that I'm just used to it. Because even before I used the Switch Pro controller to play everything, I was using the Wii U Pro controller to play everything. I think I've told that story before, but it was basically just that I used, because like one of my like most played games for at least a year or two straight was playing Smash Ultimate, or not Smash Ultimate, not even Smash Ultimate, playing Smash 4 competitively with like a bunch of friends. And I was the only person that basically refused to use a GameCube refused to use a GameCube controller because I wanted, like, I just did not like the GameCube controller. And that was, you know, the only other really practical option for playing that game. And then it just kind of turned into a thing where I got so used to using it for that all the time that I went out of my way to get a, like, wireless adapter dongle thing, which I still have. Which is honestly pretty cool, because it just automatically makes controllers X input, so even before I was playing a bunch of stuff on Steam, I could use the Wii U Pro controller for, like, any game ever, because it would just consider it an Xbox controller. And you can pair up to 4 controllers to it, which is extra cool, because Bluetooth on the computer sucks a lot. And if I ever have like a handful of friends over and we all want to play something, I can basically only connect 2 controllers via Bluetooth before there's some pretty massive latency issues. So like having that controller on the back, or having that controller adapter on the back burner and like a handful of Wii U Pro controllers means that those controllers are wireless, but they're not using Bluetooth. They're using that adapter. I know at first I really liked it, but later on I dove into going for better times and the time trials and stuff. I honestly, like, want to find a game again where I want to do that kind of thing. I haven't felt that kind of, like, intense, like get the best rank on everything in a game for, like, a little while. I guess the last would be, which I still want to get back into at some point, is, Theater Rhythm. As far as, like, I actually was pretty into getting all of the scores that I could, like, trying to, at the very least, get, like, the no misses on the hard mode difficulty. Which I did almost on the arcade version. And then had to start all over once they made a port of it. So I think I was a little burnt out to do it all at once. But honestly, that's not a bad thing. That means that if I'm excited to go back to the game at some point, I still kind of have, like, I still have a lot to go back to with it. There was a part of me that, like, somewhat recently I replayed through Sonic Adventure 2, and I thought that it would be cool to finally get around to getting, I think it's only up to A rank in that game, getting A rank on everything. And then I realized I didn't like the game as much as I remembered I did, so I don't think I'm actually that passionate about getting all the A ranks in it. It feels like kind of cool to do as just kind of a completing my childhood sort of thing, but like, I don't actually think I want to do it. And then one series that I wish I could want to do that with would be the Devil May Cry series, but I don't. I basically wish that the Devil May Cry series had the ranking system that Bayonetta did. Because I don't like the Bayonetta series nearly as much as games, but I like their ranking system a lot more. Devil May Cry's is weird, because they take into account, like, orbs that you, like the currency pickups that you find in the stages for your rank, and I'm like, that's not even the first thing on my mind while I'm playing this. Bayonetta 3 actually did a super cool thing that I love, where, like, Bayonetta's ranking system has always been, like, really, really brutal. Like, if you want to get the best rank in every stage, it's literally play everything perfectly and don't get hit. Which is kind of cool, but it's exhausting for, like, an entire, like, you know, 10 to 30 minute chapter, depending on, like, where it is in the game. But Bayonetta 3 lets you literally, like, pick which fights you want to get the ranking on. So it's basically just, like, a whole bunch of trial fights that you can pick whenever you want. But the big issue with that is also did not really love Bayonetta 3 in particular as a game, which I know I'm not alone on. I have an unpopular opinion on Automata 2, despite me loving Metal Gear Rising and Bayonetta. I never really liked Automata. Yeah, I mean, I personally, I might have gone on this rant before, but like, something that I hold like a lot of value in action games like this, with Devil May Cry being like my entry point, is I really like when moves feel like they have something that like really sets them apart. And I feel like a lot of Platinum games aren't great at having like a balance for that kind of thing. And it's something that I've always kind of had a problem with Bayonetta with, where like a lot of the times it does actually feel you can kind of get by in that game just kind of mashing buttons in a way that's like not super engaging. Where like even the big attacks, like a lot of them just kind of like feel like you're doing the same thing. And honestly, NieR Automata is kind of similar. The combat in that game is not phenomenal. And I remember the combat in this game being a lot more fun. I think overall they balance it a lot better in this game. I was gonna say than a lot of other Platinum games. This isn't a Platinum game, but yeah, I don't know. I still haven't played Metal Gear Rising, so Metal Gear Rising might be better about it. But yeah, it's always a problem I've had with Bayonetta and NieR Automata, where like it very rarely feels like the combos are like functionally different. It just kind of feels like they're like mashing on them, but instead I'm kicking now. And like even if it does change like how like the combo meter works in that game, which I honestly I haven't dug too deep into that, I don't know how it affects it. I'm like, okay, well I don't feel like I'm doing anything different, even if you're just like, even if I'm just, I guess, kicking in this combo. And the different weapons make up for it a little bit, but it never made up for it enough for me. I don't know if my opinion would change with Bayonetta if I like really went deep on like trying to get like good rankings and stuff. If that would kind of help me appreciate the depth that it can get to. Because funny enough, I have heard people make the same complaint against Devil May Cry as a series. Is like people who aren't really like looking to play at like the higher difficulties are just kind of like, yeah, you can just kind of mash through it. And I'm like, I've literally never thought of Devil May Cry like that, but I guess I could see how you could come to that if you were playing on easier difficulties and not going for rankings or anything. Yeah, I don't know. Not that Devil May Cry is literally the only game to get it right, but like, I can just feel how good of a job they do in that series, designing moves to all feel like they really have like their own unique function. And even just the fact that combos are all like timing based and not input based. And like the end of the, like all of the different combos tend to like end pretty differently. I just really like the feeling of having to like be like, well, okay, how am I going to go into this scenario and how do I want to time things out for like doing as much as possible in here? Where again, in Bayonetta, it feels like it's like, why don't I just mash the most effective wide range thing over and over outside of the ranking system, I guess. And then Bayonetta 3 was that to like the nth degree, where like, I've seen pretty strong cases that people make for the game where it's like, this combo systems and combat system is actually insanely cool once you learn how to like weave in and out of everything and whatnot. Or you could just send out the big thing to attack enemies and have it feel kind of like an easy win button. Honestly, one thing that's funny about like, I guess just playing this game again in general and also Automata is that like, before I replayed Automata even, I had messed around with like, or just in general, I've messed around with like VRChat in the past year or so, and there is somebody that has gone extremely hard into remaking a ton of maps from both NieR and NieR Automata to be like explorable, like very detailed VRChat maps. Because a lot of the times when they're just maps like pulled from video games, sometimes they're just like pretty lazily kind of like plopped in without many like, you know, with no animations, no like details around the map or anything. Like it's like just kind of the 3D model that you can walk around. but they go way harder into them, and they're just like really pretty places to walk around.
I delivered the mutton.
So it feels like funny playing the actual video game version of it again. Have we visited this area in VRChat? We have. I was talking about that earlier, where like there's somebody who's gone really hard into recreating a bunch of NieR maps in VRChat, and honestly, this one's one of my favorites for obvious reasons. It's just a really pleasant place to walk around. I actually had it set as my home world for a really long time, but it's kind of like enormous and takes a while to load, so eventually I was like, fine, I'll put something lighter. What I wish they stopped doing is putting in reasonable amounts of important lore into the mobile games of existing IPs. Yeah, that's super annoying with NieR, especially, just because of how heavily the games tend to be connected. Yeah, I've always been curious, but I don't know what it would take for me to play an entire mobile game curious. Gameplay of the mobile game isn't something I'd recommend to anybody. Yeah, no, I've tried to get into mobile games a few times, and it's just not gonna happen. I think ultimately, like, if I had my choice with basically every game ever, I'd rather them not be like heavily numbers-based games. Like, even something like this game, it's pretty well like paced and balanced around the numbers. You know, as far as like RPG stats and stuff. But then all I think at that rate is, well, if it's really well paced around the numbers to the point where I don't really feel it that much, then I'd rather there just not be numbers to begin with. Like, I like when games are just kind of balanced around, you know, the tools as is, so to speak. And mobile games, for the most part, are literally the antithesis to that. Just in the sense that they're like, you know, obviously, they're that, which is already something that's pretty hard to balance around in, like, a non-monetized game. But then when you bring monetization into the balance, it's, like, just so much more gross. And not even fun. Then it's not even fun to think about the numbers. It's like, well, if money is the numbers, then am I playing a game anymore? I don't even know. Like, if NieR's mobile game had something real-time, I'd probably love it, but it's an auto-combat turn-based speed. Oh, auto-combat's even worse. I know the only time that I got, like, close to liking a mobile game that was, like, pretty number-based, and honestly wasn't even, like, it didn't feel, like, too crazy pay-to-win, at least for a lot of it, was, there's a Final Fantasy mobile game. What was the one that, I guess there's a handful of them. I'm trying to remember the name of the one that I liked. And, like, it technically had, like, a character system, but it wasn't gacha, which was kind of cool. Like, you just had to get, like, the things to unlock the characters. Record Keeper, that was the one. There's also PvD, which I don't give a shit about. Yeah, no, that sounds like a bad time. And again, like, as somebody who's, like, deep into, like, fighting games and stuff, I'm like, literally the entire appeal of games like that is the literal experience and damage output you're getting from just getting better at them. So a game that's literally just like, oh yeah, just get the better numbers and let the things do everything for you. It's like, what? Again, what are you even playing at that point? I, like, don't get it. But yeah, Record Keeper was kind of cool, because it was basically just back-to-back, like, actual Final Fantasy battles. But then I remembered that, again, it mostly just came down to the balance thing of it all, where it was like, the easy battles were nothing, which in fairness is pretty accurate to actual Final Fantasy games, but it turns out that, without any context around it, is kind of boring. And hard battles, if they, you know, hit a Goldilocks sweet spot of things that you felt like you could actually strategize against, were really fun, but if they weren't that, then they were, you know, it was just a wall that you wouldn't get past until you got stronger stuff. So it basically felt like the entire time I was playing the game, I was just, like, fishing for the Goldilocks battles, where they were, like, you know, happened to be pretty leveled around where I was leveled, so it made it so I felt like I actually had to strategize in them. And that was just so few and far between, because, like, how do you balance around that? You just don't, if money is involved. It was also kind of hard with some of the design. I wanted to be muted and minimal, like Replicant and Automatics, but when you judging the rarity of items... Oh, yeah, no. The UI of mobile games is... Most of the time, it's just so chaotic that it breaks all immersion, like, instantly. Like, even if there was something to kind of get lost in there, I just feel like I'm playing, like, a game on a billboard. Or, like, you know, like a slot machine or something. Like, something that's in, like, this crazy arcade environment where there's supposed to be just throwing numbers and information at you, and I'm like, oh my god, just let me play the game. I will say, I think the most I've been tempted by a mobile game in recent memory, and I haven't heard great things about it, but I still can't help but be curious just about what it is on paper, is that very recently a Devil May Cry mobile game came out that was like, actually looks like it's just Devil May Cry battles, except it seems like a bunch of stuff is tied to stats, so I'm a little worried that it's probably just going to be another mess like that, and it almost definitely will be. But also, no, it's garbage? Okay. I had very little doubts, but it's unfortunate, because at least, you know, watching 2 seconds of gameplay, it looks like even like a B-grade Devil May Cry game. Sounds kind of sort of interesting. Neutered the combat and gotcha heavy as fuck. Okay. Wonderful. So just like the Mega Man one. Yeah. I think mobile games in general are just one of those things where, like, I like to think of myself as somebody who's pretty good about not being, like, too, like, kids these days about, like, things that are popular and whatnot. Or, even, you know, even if it isn't interesting to me, it's like, whatever. I'm not this age anymore. It might just be a little bit harder for me to latch onto it. Nostalgia is a pretty powerful thing, so maybe I just will be nostalgic to the things I grew up with. You know, stuff like new Pokemon and stuff, where I'm like, is the new Pokemon worse? Am I just biased for the stuff I grew up with? I don't know. I like to think I have my reasons for it, but I don't blame anybody for liking the new stuff. But with mobile games specifically, I'm like, I think I'm a little extra kids these days about it. Where I'm like, I just kind of don't understand how people get so latched onto them. And I guess I even say that from the perspective of, like, I'd love for somebody who is super into them to, like, kind of break it down and be like, these are why I find it a lot of fun. But almost any time, like, even some of my, like fighting game friends that occasionally get latched onto a mobile game, I think anytime I've asked them about it, they're like, I don't fucking know. I just touch things on the screen. It's kind of fun. And I'm like, okay. I'll take your word for it, I guess. Or they're, like, borderline, like, self-deprecating about it. They're like, yeah, I know that this is literally nothing, but I like it anyway. And I'm like, okay. Well, you certainly didn't convince me, but they ever give is just like, yeah, I like being manipulated mentally. Yeah, it's so strange. And I mean, maybe I just haven't had a conversation with the right person about it or whatever. Like, maybe somebody can give me something a little bit deeper, but I've never gotten anything deeper than that, even asking people I know who, like, have spent a decent amount of time in one game or another. They're small brain and evil, yeah. And it's not like I don't get the small brain part of it. But, like, there's gotta be better ways to be small brain, even on a phone. You know what I mean? There are non-evil mobile games, but they're not the ones that get advertising, so... Like, what was that game that came out recently, actually? That, like, bunny game where you just, like, take care of a bunch of bunnies and they all have cute animations and stuff. And it was just, like, a mobile game made by one person. And, like, the microtransactions are really small and, like, you know, maybe just because it was made by one person, they're very much framed as just, like, you know, really it's no big deal if you get these. It's not, like, the biggest boost in the world, but you're practically tipping me just because you're enjoying your time here. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe not specifically my kind of game, but I can absolutely see why people would be having fun with this. That and Disco Zoo are my favorite. Yeah, I think Disco Zoo. Like, again, that's not one that I ended up playing, but I feel like I remember hearing similarly good things about it. So, it, like, doesn't count. Because as far as, like, the game structure goes, it's, like, not a mobile game, quote-unquote. Like, it's basically just a super normal puzzle game that happened to be released on mobile for, like, a really reasonable price. But I like recommending it when I can, because a pretty small company made it. It's called, Quell, and there's a few different entries in the series. I usually, like, I compare it to something like Braid. Like, if you're a fan of Braid, you'll probably like Quell. Quell Memento, specifically, is the one that I thought was really good. I'll look up, like, a trailer for it after this. It's, like, a really simple game. It's kind of like one of those, like, ice slide puzzle games, like Pokemon kind of has, where, like, you start moving in a direction and then you keep moving in that direction kind of game. But it does it really well. And, like, at least, again, Quell Memento is the only one that has, like, a story kind of going on in the background for it, and it's, like, it's a vibe. I imagine a lot of Flash games would probably make for great mobile games. I think a lot of them did, too. Like, anybody who had the means and the sense to do it and wanted to make some money was just kind of like, yeah. Let me do the thing where I make a lot of money off of this really simple idea I had in the 2000s.
We are each the sum of our parts. If we let the pieces slip away, we slip away too.
I really like the voiceover stuff they do through the game and stuff. They don't do it super often, so it's just like these little things every now and again.
Lives learning are worth struggling to reclaim.
So it's literally just moving a raindrop on a window. But they do it like they do it in a cool way where like usually the stages aren't insanely hard to figure out on their own. But then they'll do this thing where like there's
Life is thick with little pains.
What's it called? There's hidden things in every stage where you'll have to like find like a wall to crack to find it. And then there's also like a minimum moves to beat a stage. And a lot of the reason I compare it to Braid is that they do something very, I mean, on top of just the vibes, like these are super like Braid vibes, but this is a little loud. It's like basically over anyway.
Once upon a time, I forgot the world.
But yeah, it's they do the same kind of thing where like every new area you unlock is like same base game, but has like a really cool like puzzly gimmick to it. Like a lot of them were shown off in that trailer, like find the spot where you like shoot out the lasers, or you know, pass by the walls to light them all up, like things like that, where like your goal changes in that way. And it's just really cozy. But also like it kind of has that like it has a very good level of like completionist stuff to do, where it doesn't feel like a game that you can just kind of like blow through. Like you actually have to like look at each puzzle pretty hard as it goes on. But yeah, no, like I said, I think it would be kind of a boring stream. Otherwise, I'd stream it, if for no other reason to get more eyes on the game, because I just really like the game. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Also, to, I guess, bring this entire conversation a little more full circle. When you were saying... What did you say? Imagine a reality where you could just play, like, Newgrounds games, but as mobile games. I remember... Not that it's exactly the same, but I remember there was this brief period of time, which basically doesn't exist anymore, where the Wii mobile browser had Flash. So you could go to Flash game sites, and as long as they were mouse-only games, you could play them on the Wii. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever as a kid. And I don't know if there's even a way to replicate it nowadays. Short of if there's a program that lets you use like a Wiimote as a mouse on a computer. But a lot of the reason that I think about that, and I think the way that I found Quell Memento was a website called Original Games, which I don't know if they're still up and running, because they were Flash. I don't know if it's like emulating the games through something. Yeah, looks like it. Or it's just a bunch of like insanely cozy Flash games. I still listen to like the music from this website a ton. Where like, sure, if it decides to work. Hell yeah, it does work. Where all the games have like this just like silly, cozy energy to them with like really good music. And like a game like this, again, it's all mouse, so you could just like play this on the Wii, no problem. Womp. And I think I don't think anybody actually composed for those games. I think that person just did those as like passion projects and like stole music from wherever. But one of the composers that had their music in that game did the music for Quell, and I think I found them by like trying to look into like the different artists that person pulled from for games on that website. But that was one of those sites that I definitely tapped into on the Wii when the Wii could play Flash games. But yeah, weird little full circle on that. I forgot that I left Facebook open. I don't actually like use Facebook, honestly. Like as far as like posting on Facebook, that's something I have not done in a very long time, and even when I did, it was very few and far between. I pretty much just use it for Messenger, and it's pretty much just for the sake of keeping in contact with, like, an extremely small list of people. It used to be friends and family, but now at this point, even most of my family isn't even on Facebook anymore, and if we're gonna talk, we just do it through text. So it's basically like one friend of mine that uses Facebook more than they use Discord, even though they have a Discord. Yeah, I've always had like kind of a weird relationship with social media though, as far as like, I always just, for the most part, get this weird feeling like it's just so easy for posts to get lost in the void that usually if I am going to try to like communicate things that I care about with people, I would much rather it be sent like right to them. Because anytime I would try to make a post on Facebook, it would just be like this weird, like, nobody's seeing it, so why did I bother posting it? And it, not even in any kind of weird, like, the opposite side of that, where I'm like, man, I wish I got more likes. It was like, man, I shared something that I wanted to share, and I hoped that my friends would have fun with it, and I don't even know if anybody's seeing it, or if just nobody cares. And, like, either way, it's like, well, at least if I sent it directly to them, we could have had a conversation about it. And then even when it comes to something like a little bit more open-ended, like Twitter or whatever, where, like, you know, I don't know, it just will just randomly hide posts from people, and then it just doesn't even matter. And I think, honestly, that's at least, like, part of the reason that something like streaming felt more appealing to me, is that, like, at least if I'm going to be saying stuff, it's going to be for the people who want to be here, and they will definitely, you know, hear it and get the chance to engage with it. It makes talking about the things I care about more fun when I know people will actually be here. Yesterday I was at a furry meet in the park. Oh, that's super cool. It's kind of funny I specifically decided to go by my real name, but most people seem to call each other by their personas. Yeah, I think it's funny. I remember the first time that I ever went to Smash tournaments and getting really thrown off by that too, where there's like a very sizable number of people that know me by my like tag that I used for Smash first and my actual name second. And it was especially weird at the time because, like, it was, you know, I had never really heard my handle out loud before. So it was strange hearing my handle out loud to begin with. But eventually it just kind of, you know, it started to feel normal with time. And there's a lot of people that I'm that way about too, where I basically only know them by their tag. Or they just prefer it, like, you know, their nickname of choice is also their tag. Or maybe it became their nickname of choice, you know, because it was their tag and because they really liked that everybody was calling them it. And yeah, I can only assume, like, furry circles are basically the same exact way. I imagine with furries it's an even bigger thing too, because at least, like, when it comes to fighting game stuff, the tags are just kind of like a fun part of it, like, just like, oh hey, I can make a cool little nickname for myself. But with furries, it's such like a bigger like identifier or identity thing that, like, just kind of like a part of wanting to be in that kind of space is like, yeah, call me by the thing, because we're all the thing here. I feel like I'm one of the very few people that I've ever talked to about it where, like, I actually like kind of like the tank controls in the original Resident Evil. And almost think it's, like, weirder to control, like, the fixed camera angles without them. And I didn't grow up with the original Resident Evils. Like, the only one that I had played, like, when I was really young was Resident Evil 4. And I even played that before playing, like, the older, like, fixed camera Resident Evils. But my brain just, like, did something where, like, on paper, the controls in Resident Evil 4 and the controls in, like, the older Resident Evils are, like, identical, other than having the ability to aim however you want. It's like both tank controls, it's just one of them happens to be over the shoulder, so it's like a little bit more intuitive. And something in my brain just clicked where I was like, oh, it literally feels exactly like Resident Evil 4, and this isn't confusing to me, like, for me to control at all. And I have talked to plenty of people who have not had that same experience. But I'm glad that I did, because it meant that I could enjoy the old Resident Evil games. Because I know that there are a lot of people who just straight up can't because the tank controls are too much, which is completely valid because it is weird. But you especially notice it when you play a game that doesn't have them, or doesn't have the tank controls but does the fixed camera, because anytime the camera angle changes, your control stick just kind of like, how is it even going to do it? Oh, see, yeah, they have to do like a weird thing where like, so I hold down here, and I'm still holding down, but it's moving me forward because that's the direction I was moving in before. Like, they either have to have some weird fix like that, or they have to just not do anything, which is what the Devil May Cry games do, where they sometimes have the fixed camera angles, and then it's always super annoying when the camera angles change. Because it'll just randomly flip your controls around. Yeah, I definitely prefer tank controls for that reason. Yeah, it just, like, it logically made a lot more sense for me. And I'm glad it did, because that was just one of those things that got, like, it gets, like, scared into you before you play the old Resident Evils, that tank controls are the worst thing in the world. So I was like, oh boy, here we go. I'll try it, but this will probably be awful. And then I was like, what? This is what everyone's complaining about? But at the same time, it is just physically, you know, I understand where the mental disconnect would be, because you're literally, you know, forward isn't moving you forward on the screen, and I can completely understand how it would be hard to rewire your brain for that. But also, fixed camera angles feel like a much more sensible decision back when people did re-rendered backgrounds all the time. Yeah, no, I am definitely somebody who is not a purist about that with the Resident Evil games. Like, I would definitely... I have zero issue with all of, like, the Resident Evil remakes being in first person over the fixed camera angles. But, you know, the fixed camera angles definitely do cool things. The moment that'll always stand out to me from the first Resident Evil is, I think it's when you first go into the graveyard. There's, like, a moment where it, like, puts you, like, way behind the fence and, like, behind some of the graves and stuff like that. Or, like, that's where it puts the camera. So you're, like, walking, like, from right to left or left to right. And it's just got, like, a really cool camera angle to it like that. When they do artsy stuff like that, I love it. But, like, 99 times out of 100, I could pretty much give or take it.